Hello and welcome to the Rare Slot. My name is Rands, and these are the bonus episodes of the Booster Pack podcast. Now, the Booster Pack, that's the show where I unwrap the stories and crack the mysteries of collectible games each and every episode. But here on the Rare Slot, we can have a little bit more of a casual conversation about a collectible trading card game related topic in a more freeform space. But let's cut right to the chase today because we have got something incredibly special. Now, for those of you who have joined me for a few times on this podcast series, you know that I'm super passionate about something very specific when it comes to collectible trading card games. In fact, it's a passion that almost rivals my enthusiasm for actually playing and deck building and collecting those games. It is a passion that you know as me sharing the behind-the-scenes stories and histories of those games and the people who created them. Now, over the years, whether that's on social media or whether that's through this podcast, I have shared a plethora of stories of how these colorful cardboard collectibles came to be created. That could be with players, that could have been with writers, and of course it could have been with the designers of those games, whose careers were either born, molded, or excelled from working in collectible trading card games. Yes, we have told a whole bunch of stories, almost all of them, and you guys have joined to listen. Now, I said almost all because there is one major story we've yet to cover on this show, and it's a story that without it, none of the other stories that have been told so far could exist. That is the origin story of the genre's progenitor, Magic the Gathering. Now, today is not the time for me to share that story. Hopefully, that privilege will be coming soon. But for my trio of guests, they will soon be sharing that story with the world through a very unique medium, a personal favorite of mine, in fact. Yes, my guests today are producers on an upcoming feature-length documentary titled Igniting the Spark, The Story of Magic the Gathering. And from the very first time I heard about this project way back in pre-pandemic 2020, I have been inspired to continue telling other collectible trading card game stories as well. But I didn't just invite them here today to continue inspiring me directly. No, I invited them here so you could get to know them and learn about their amazing project. A project that, in fact, you could become a part of and even help support and create through a currently running Kickstarter campaign that'll be linked in the description. So please welcome to the Rare Slot the producers of the Igniting the Spark Magic the Gathering documentary. It is Brian, Kelly, and Seth. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hello.
Thanks for having us, Rance.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, thank you so much for joining me. Now, this show does have a audio version and a video version, so let's just sound off for the ones just listening in their cars or whatnot. So I'm just going to say, let's go with first Brian. Brian, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Brian Stillman. I am a producer and director of documentaries, and I work on docu-series, all tending towards the geekier side of life.
Excellent, excellent. All right, and Kelly, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do specifically on this documentary?
Sure. My name is Kelly Slagle. I am founder and CEO of Cavegirl Productions, which is two people, but that's beside the point. Cavegirl Productions, we also work on the geekier side of life. We've produced, I'm a director, editor, producer type, and we've produced a narrative feature film called Of Dice and Men, and co-produced along with Brian the documentary Eye of the Beholder, The Art of Dungeons and Dragons. So we're excited for geeky project big geeky project number 3.
Oh, that's awesome. So you guys are obviously no strangers to the world of nerd. Seth, why don't you sound off and give us our last little soundbite, introduce yourself as well.
My name's Seth Polanski, and I'm just some guy they found on the side of the road. I do all the back office stuff, like the legal and accounting stuff, and I also do the location, audio, and mixing.
Yeah.
So everything you hear in our films is either my fault or thanks to me.
That's awesome. I bet you never thought that will audio mix for food or ride on the side of the road sign would work.
Apparently it did.
That's fantastic. Well, obviously, you know, we've talked about it in the intro, and you guys have mentioned your previous projects there. But let's talk about this particular project because it really excites me. As I said, I am super enthusiastic about collectible games history, and you cannot go further back in the history than the story of Magic the Gathering. So tell us how this project came about. I heard you guys did a Dungeons and Dragons documentary as well. So tell us all about that.
Well, we worked together previously on a documentary called Eye of the Beholder, The Art of Dungeons and Dragons. We are all gamers, and we that went well, so we decided we wanted to keep working together.
I think that you can read that as we didn't kill each other, so why not do another one?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
We all walked away from it reasonably unscathed. And we I think making a documentary about the history of Magic was kind of a no-brainer for us, right? I mean, we love the game. Seth's been playing it longer than Kelly or I, but you know, we also knew so many of the people involved with it at that point. You know, a lot of the artists who worked on D&D also work on Magic the Gathering. So for us, I think it was the natural next step.
Yeah, and I think with igniting the spark, it was an expansion for us because Eye of the Beholder was specifically about the art. So it was about the art in the game of D&D. And then when we were exploring the magic idea, we were like, no, we want to explore even more about a subject. So we decided to tackle, you know, a smidge 30-year history of the games, no problem. So we went big and decided to delve into the history of Magic on this one. But yeah, it was easier because we had those relationships formed while doing Eye of the Beholder, not just with artists, but like just people involved in the gaming community that maybe we didn't know as well before. So
plus our own, you know, group of friends and, you know, my own nerddom, right? I've been playing since the dark. So I'm literally, this is my, we're out here in my streaming studio. I am tweaking an Osgear Commander deck right now. It's literally sitting here in front of me on the desk.
As you may have guessed, Seth and I cohabitate and have been married for 11 plus years. And so a significant portion of the real estate of our home is dedicated to Magic.
And if it's anything like mine, any spare table space or shelf space or anything like that, we'll have a precarious stack sitting on top of it.
There are Magic cards tucked in every nook and cranny in our house, or Magic related items of some kind. And it's just funny, you know, Seth's default is tweaking decks, like just existing.
This is my shuffling deck. What are you doing? I'm watching TV. This is my shuffling deck.
Yeah, I mean, it's just what he does. So it's so ingrained in our lives, particularly that yeah, this was, like Brian said, this was a no-brainer.
And she knows which binder to grab if the house is on fire.
If the house is on fire,
the land binder.
No,
grab the land binder.
The dual land binder. Well, yeah.
Of course, because you can use that anywhere. Now, I mean, I love hearing about that. And if you lose your attention, I'll know why, Seth. I don't blame you. But obviously, you can't make a collectible games documentary about Magic the Gathering without talking about so many firsts. You know, talking about it was the first game to revolutionize gaming. It was the in this collectible space. But let's rewind a second. Let's talk about your first. You know, Seth mentioned that he's been playing since the dark. Tell us about what your story and history with the game of Magic the Gathering is yourselves. At least Brian and Kelly.
Well, let Seth start. Yeah,
he's got a good story.
I've been playing this game for a very long time, and this is how I knew it was special. My friends and I had gone to senior year at the beach. We were at the ocean. We were at the right, and instead of going out to the clubs and trying to pick up women, we sat in our rooms playing Magic.
Well, it must be pretty good if it's distracting teenage boys from the opportunity of going out and meeting girls.
That's exactly right.
I'll tell my story, which is not quite as scandalous, but I have been around Magic for a very long time, way before Seth and I got together, at least 25 years. I remember my friends in coffee houses, you know, my goth friends in coffee houses in 1995, 96, playing Magic there and literally spending their rent money on cards.
As much as things change, they stay the same, right?
Right, exactly. So it was, you know, I was always fascinated, like, what is, you know, the draw of this, that it is literally, you know, taking money out of their pockets, you know, when they might not have a place to stay the next day. And then, you know, so people that I was friends with and people I dated, I always like making the joke I was gamer adjacent for a very long time. You know, and obviously when I got together with Seth, it became a bigger part of my life. And then I learned how to play, I guess, 4 years ago now.
A little bit more than that.
Yeah, finally I learned how to play, but it wasn't him who taught me. It was a good friend of ours, Allison, who taught me because he couldn't teach me. And I, you know, finally understood what it was all about. And I've always appreciated the art, particularly in Magic. It's always been, you know, excellent artwork. Just looking at the cards, I always enjoyed that. But so yeah, when I finally started to play, of course, I have a cat
tribal
cat. So I had a cat tribal deck that I played. But yeah, so that's kind of how I came into it. But yeah, I've just been around it forever.
So what about you, Brian? Obviously, for those who are watching can see that you're surrounded by all sorts of geeky artifacts and everything like that. So I'm sure you've known about Magic the Gathering, at least by name, for decades and decades. Tell us about what your origin story with this particular game is.
I remember being in college, and it must have been '94. My friend and I went to this little bookstore in Saratoga Springs, New York, and it was a science fiction bookstore. We played D&D. I've been playing D&D since, first edition AD&D back in the '80s. And we go into the store, and the guy says, if you're playing D&D, you're playing all this stuff, you're buying all these books, what you really need to do is check out this game. And he gave us a starter set of Magic cards. And we went back to the dorm room, and we were kind of reading the rules and scratching our heads, but we were thinking, this looks really cool. We played about 4 hands trying to figure out like how it works, what to do, and were thoroughly confused and went back to playing D&D. And I sort of had an off and on relationship with Magic ever since. And then when we were working on Eye of the Beholder, we were traveling a lot, we were spending a lot of time in hotel rooms. Seth said, okay, you have to learn to play this game, because if we're going to be hanging out in hotel rooms all the time, we got to do something.
I love that you guys have just shared how contagious this game is, to probably use terrible phrasing at this time in our history. But, it's passed from Seth, it's, gone to Kelly, and obviously, Seth again to Brian, which, I mean, for those following the current Magic story is very appropriate with Phyrexians and stuff like that.
I am complete.
Indeed. Now, you guys said that you guys are sort of centered around gaming worlds, and this show is about celebrating the genre that Magic created. Trading card games, collectible card games, whichever moniker you choose to use. Do you guys have any experience with any of those other games over the years? Perhaps Seth, we'll start with you.
He does. I know he does.
Oh, Lord. Jihad, which morphed into Vampire the Eternal Struggle for ridiculous political reasons. God, we could start, just keep going. Werewolf.
I think I demonstrate this by saying we have a table in our house, and in that table are 16 drawers. They're all drawers. Every single drawer is filled with card games.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like we're very akin in that sense, Seth, because obviously I was the same. Exploring this genre is something that I love. Do Kelly or Brian, do either of you have any experience of collectible trading card games outside of the Magic the Gathering space?
Not so much. I mean, I was always much more of a role-playing game player. But I did play a lot. So maybe I'm dating myself, but pre-Magic, there was the original Steve Jackson games, Illuminati.
That was it,
it wasn't a collectible game.
Not at that point.
Not at that point, right? Correct. It has since become one, because everyone started to recognize that's where the money is. But the original game I played. But beyond that, honestly, it wasn't where my head was at. It really took Magic, and there's a lot of things about Magic that pulled me into it. But it really took this game and sort of what it ended up creating in terms of the community, in terms of the sort of ubiquity of it, and then all these ancillary elements around it, the art, the events and things like that, to really get me into this type of gaming.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I absolutely agree. And like I said, there is a ton of other games that came around it, but Magic has always been the standard bearer, the gold standard of what a collectible game should be. And it's learned from other games and everything like that. Now, I've loved getting to know your gaming history, but let's get to know this project a little bit more. Like, obviously, we've talked about, how Magic has touched your lives. Give me a little bit of an overview of, say a lot of listeners to the show have, might have tangentially tried Magic. They might be playing other collectible card games. You mentioned, the Middle-earth collectible card game and stuff like that, Seth. We mentioned Vampire the Eternal Struggle. I know a lot of listeners come in from those spaces. If somebody's not interested in Magic the Gathering specifically, why don't you sort of pitch your documentary about a great way for people to sort of find, the value and history in this sort of cultural phenomenon, this lifestyle?
I think that if you are into collectible and trading card games, like you had said earlier, Rands, this is the progenitor of it all. This is the thing that turned the idea of it into a viable gaming. It transformed gaming. That's the thing. Up until Magic came along, it was all about role-playing games. Wizards of the Coast, they were publishing role-playing games before Magic came out. And you know, Lisa Stevens, who was the first person to get hired by Wizards of the Coast, she came over from Vampire. You know what I mean? So up through the early 90s, role-playing games dominated. And then Magic came out, and it was like overnight, everything changed. It completely upended the gaming industry as it was at the time, which isn't to say role-playing games went away, but it completely it made everyone reevaluate the types of products they were putting out. And that's why all of a sudden you had TSR trying to put out a collectible card game, you know, and everybody was trying to put out a collectible card game. None of them stuck the way Magic did. But so I think if you like these games, to really understand the history of these games, you have to go back to this foundational kind of aspect of it and understand Magic, because without it, I'm not sure those other games, as good as they are, and some of them are very, very good, I don't think they, for whatever reason, have the thing that would allow them to become the breakout lifestyle brand, IP, game, property, whatever you want to call it, that Magic did. So I think it's fair to say without Magic and without whatever that special quality was, I don't quite know if the industry would have taken off in that direction the way it did.
You know, and I have one thing to add to that. It wasn't just the industry that changed and the people purchasing cards and what they were making. It was the services that served that industry. Stores popped up just because Magic hit big. We have a whole plethora of game stores across the world. I was just going to say the United States, but you know, this is, you know, hopefully global reach. Everywhere, new game stores opened up because of this game. That's crazy to me. It drove a new kind of industry.
And of course, you know, ancillary products as well, sleeves and playmats and cards and all sorts of.
This is a playmat with my wife on it.
And there's companies that are making plenty of money making those kinds of things nowadays, because people love this game so much. And you know, obviously, many other games have followed. Now, Kelly, what were you going to say?
It remains such a major part of game stores, you know, plan. You know, like 50% of their real estate is sometimes dedicated purely to Magic, and then you have all the other games. You know, so Magic is not just a game in a game store. It is the game store plus other games happen to be sold around it. Like it's just such, and we use the word often, you know, juggernaut, but it's just monstrous.
And it's not just the real estate in the store and the game itself. It's the events that the stores are running around the game too, right? Friday Night Magic changed the way that people interacted with trading card games.
Yeah, the community is all like a whole other subject, but I mean, so, you know, what was it about this game that made it hit that way is why we wanted to do this documentary, because it's like we wanted to talk to not only the people who started it, but the people who are still doing it and being like, you know, 30 years of this, how is it maintained that no pun intended magic? How is it maintained that all this time? You know, what's the secret sauce, you know, that makes it happen?
And I think that's a fascinating thing to explore, because, you know, we just talked about how game stores basically treat it as essential as electricity, as essential as a Wi-Fi connection or anything like that. You know, it is something that's keeping those stores basically mainstays. You know, obviously there are other things, you know, we mentioned Pokemon before, you know, there's obviously Yu-Gi-Oh! And a bunch of other Splinter games nowadays that have come out. But obviously this is something that is, it does have that gravitas around it. And obviously learning about the history of that is so valuable, and what binds, you know, this entire industry together is a lot of the time Magic the Gathering.
It has so many different hooks that appeal to different groups of people. There are, you know, the artwork, which you've mentioned repeatedly, you know, people who just like fantasy art or interesting art because it's gone beyond just classic fantasy art now. You know, people who are into art, they can just focus on that. People who are into complicated game mechanics, they can focus on just that. People who are into collecting, like, as you both know, collecting, you have that component. And then, you know, the role play component. I'm a wizard on a battlefield and I'm fighting someone else. I like squirrels. I like ogres. I like zombies, you know, whatever. You can go, I like that. And this game fulfills that that like.
Well, to specific to your point before, cats in that case.
You're right, cats in my case. So, it's the hooks are endless with Magic. It's just kind of frightening how endless they are.
And it doesn't even
So,
touch on the
then it's the
cosplay aspect.
combos. It's the combos of all the hooks. And then it's the social aspect on top of it. Oh, I get to hang out with my friends or people I don't like or people I do like and play this game and online and in person. Like it's just so endless.
Well, it's each one of those strings is a string on the marionette that makes it the lifestyle game that it is, right?
And that's the thing. It is one of Wizards' big goals, and they started with D&D doing this, and it's extending into Magic, is the idea that these are becoming lifestyle brands. And we talk about it as a lifestyle, but I mean lifestyle brands with a capital L and a capital B, the way comic book stuff is a lifestyle brand, the way Star Wars has become a lifestyle brand. These are things that have grown beyond the initial IP that that launched them. So it becomes something where, if you're talking about something like Star Wars, you can say, I'm a Star Wars fan, but I never saw the original trilogy. And in fact, maybe I haven't seen any of the movies, but I love the TV shows, or I love the toys, or I love the comic books, or I love the novels, or I love any of the millions of things. I love the bed sheets. I don't know, whatever it is. There are a million ways to enter Star Wars and declare yourself a fan that are so far removed now from what it originally was, this trilogy of movies that came out in 1977. I think D&D became that too, when you started to see, they tried to do this in the 80s. They tried, they had a cartoon, they had a million products. LJN released a toy line. They had, things like wallets and bed sheets. There's always bed sheets. That seems to be something that they always go to, bed sheets.
First thing they think about when they go to sleep, first thing they think about when they wake up.
Well, and that's true. And that's what they want. And it didn't catch in the 80s, but I think they've managed to pull it off now. And there's a million reasons why. The internet and people's connectivity, and there's a million things to discuss in that front. But what Wizards, their next target for that is Magic. They have a cartoon coming out. I'm positive, and I say this not having actually confirmed this, but it would be a no-brainer that someone somewhere over there is thinking about movies, and extending this property into movies. Planeswalkers were created essentially because they didn't have, besides being an interesting mechanic and besides being fun to use, they didn't have a single interconnected element running through it. Every set's a new world. There aren't really any recurring characters in the way we tend to think of recurring characters. There are a few that pop up here and there, but that makes it hard to expand the brand. Well, Planeswalkers, now we have main characters. We have this core group that you can build something around.
Well, and furthermore, as we said, we've talked about how much it's a lifestyle brand, but we've also talked about how it's a lifestyle. Further to Seth's point earlier, you go to Friday Night Magic in the same way that people find going to the gym an important part of their weekly routine. You go, you've got these rituals that you do, and this is a huge part of it. And Magic owns Friday night. What other night is there better to play some game than Friday night, and sort of instill that in that brand?
Well, actually, there's one thing I want to add. You talk about it being a lifestyle, and I think that's the thing. And all this discussion about lifestyle brands and the expansion of the IP, what gets lost in that is it's a fun game. That's the thing. At its very core, you wouldn't have any of this if it wasn't fun. It's a game, on top of everything else. It's you've pro players, so it's a way to make money. You have collectors and investors and all this other stuff. But let's not forget, this is a game. It is a thing you play.
Now, I do need to zoom out just a little bit, just because I would love to share with the audience, the great work that you guys have done for Igniting the Spark. Now, what are people going to expect with this? Like, are people, what tell us about what this documentary is? Is it, we're following somebody through the Pro Tour? Are we meeting people who are significant in the world of Magic? Tell us about what you're experiencing when you turn on Igniting the Spark.
It is tough to say exactly what the movie will be at this stage. Anyone who's ever worked on a documentary knows that it's built in the editing bay. We go out and we gather tons of information. We interviewed more than 50 people from Magic, either people who, going all the way back to Richard Garfield, who invented the game, Peter Atkinson, who started Wizards of the Coast, all the way up to people who are working on the game today, literally. Mark Rosewater, Gavin Verhey, Jess Lanzillo, Ken Troop, just all sorts of people.
Yep.
And it what we're going to do, well, we can't say specifically what we then distill that down to until we do it. I think our goal is to sort of unfold this history and get to the impact it's had and why it's had it. So it's not following a single player through. It's
Right.
not a follow doc like that or anything like that. It is a overview, look at this thing, a little bit of how it's made, if anyone's ever seen that show, a little bit of how it's made.
Which is a Canadian show, actually.
Right. Yeah, actually. A little bit of like the movies that made us, the toys that made us, those shows on Netflix. That's a little plug. I'm a producer on Toys That Made Us. Only we're not going to have a narrator or anything like that. Different style, but that type of overview is what I think we're after. How we actually do that is the big question.
So
that's what we're about to start.
Yeah, we're literally starting that process. I think tonight or tomorrow, Brian and I are having a conversation about getting some of the real editing work underway. But yeah, I mean, with Eye of the Beholder, just to give you an idea, we interviewed about 40 people for Eye of the Beholder, and we had for an 1.5-hour movie, and we had 72 hours of footage, which is a lot of footage. Magic, Igniting the Spark, the story of Magic the Gathering is on track. We have 50 plus interviews, probably by all told around 55. And the hourly footage, although it hasn't been calculated yet, is probably going to be around 120.
And that's
and that's 2 camera angles. The first movie we did was 1 camera angle. So, it's a lot. And this time we have some really great stuff from the vault to add into, which we got some amazing footage on literal VHS tapes from the 90s, where we can share some gold that hasn't been seen in a while. And so, that plus all the assets we already have and other things we're bringing in, of course, footage of people playing and tournament play. Like it's a lot of stuff. But what we're hoping to accomplish, the long story that I'm getting to is what we're hoping to accomplish is not a boring history of the game from point A to point B, but more like an overview that gives you a real sense of why this game came to be, why it has endured for so long, why people love it, what it is about it that people love, and why it's probably going to go for another 30 years.
And my hope is that we'll focus on the exciting points, right?
Yeah.
That's why we make these movies. We want to see why people are excited about it.
I can guarantee that.
So, this exciting point to that exciting point to this, this they had a terrible setback,
Yeah, there's a story to be told. I mean, we like applying a narrative arc to the documentaries. They're not just a recount of events, you know what I mean? So I think we already know what the threads are that are going to hold this together.
Well, I love to hear that. And the thing that sounds really exciting about not doing a follow-along documentary or anything that we've mentioned before is that it can be accessible. As I said, that the audience who might not be too familiar with Magic can follow along this great story thread. I recently, to plug a previous work that you guys all worked on, obviously Eye of the Beholder, I recently revisited that documentary, and it was a great time I don't play a ton of Dungeons & Dragons myself, but it was a great time to understand, you guys threaded the narrative of how the art of Dungeons & Dragons has changed over the years, and I found it completely accessible. So I think it's a fantastic thing, whether you're a A-list Magic player or somebody who plays casually or somebody who's got some things stuck in a drawer from 1998 as a Saga block or something like that, you can still get into this documentary.
That's one of the things that's important to us. We're making movies. We have an interesting sort of balancing act to walk. On one hand, we want to put stuff in there that hardcore players are going to find interesting. Right. So there are a lot of stories that people who are really steeped in this history, steeped in the game, have heard, but they're important. We have to go over that ground. But there's a lot of stuff they haven't heard, and we want to make sure we get things into these movies that are going to be of interest and going to capture the exciting elements that the hardcore players and the hardcore fans love. But at the same time, we have to make a movie that when someone who maybe doesn't play is flipping through Amazon or wherever this ends up, they look at it and say, this sounds interesting, and there's something there they can connect with. So it can't be so, inside that that only the hardcore fans understand it, and only the hardcore fans find something enjoyable about it. So it's this weird balancing act. We did it with Eye of the Beholder. My first documentary was about Star Wars toys. It was called Plastic Galaxy, and that's something that I wanted to do. I always call it the my dad test. My dad does not care about any of this. Any of it. There's nothing less interesting to him than any of this stuff. And I want to make sure that both someone like Seth, who really cares about this, or someone like you, Rands, who really cares about this stuff, will enjoy this movie. But at the same time, if my dad is watching it with you, he will be engaged. Now, he might not care as much as you guys do. And, we recognize that our real audience are people who play Magic or who have some connection. But we still want there to be something that even my dad will at least it'll keep his attention a little bit.
Where he'll
expect
go,
to totally
get
him,
right.
But yeah, if my dad walks away and goes like, well, I finished it, I'd consider that a victory.
I don't know if that's something to brag about, Brian, but
it's striking that balance. That's something we're always trying to do. Now we lean heavily, like I said, on our core audience,
of course,
which are people who play Magic. Obviously, that's where we start.
But I think
we want to keep it engaging.
I think with our first documentary, we realized after it was out there and released that maybe we should have spent a little more time explaining what a D&D game was, and just for the people who didn't know what D&D was,
who may have seen it on Stranger Things or something.
This is before Stranger Things, so it was like. So this time, Magic, one of the phrases we love is, and it's not so much the case anymore, but it's still amazing how many people haven't heard of Magic. It's the most popular game that no one's ever heard of, is the phrase we've heard used a lot. And it's, because I still mention it to people like my coworkers and other things, and they're like, what's Magic? I don't know what that is, And so we have to get to those people too, who don't even know this exists, and go, oh yeah, there's this card game. It's pretty popular. You should look at it. We have to explain to them just the basics of what a card game is like. And so we're going to incorporate a little bit of that this time that maybe we didn't include last time. But definitely, like Brian said, most of the documentary will definitely be appealing to the people who already are familiar with the product.
So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about production. Obviously, you guys have spent, as I mentioned in the introduction, you guys announced this pre-pandemic in 2020, and doing a documentary series where you're doing talking heads in person, not over Zoom, you're doing travel and stuff like that, must have been an absolute catastrophe. You drew a dud hand with no lands. That's the sort of feeling that Magic players will feel when you talk about what you're going to do. So I do want to ask you, what about some of the challenges that this production brought on for you?
My favorite part of this is, yes, we did our first set of interviews with Richard Garfield, Lisa Stevens, and Peter Atkinson in Seattle in March of Jesper in March of 2020. So we were literally, Seth and I flew in from Dulles Airport in DC. Brian, flew in from New York. We were in a deserted airport.
I have pictures of us getting on the plane, and Dulles
There's no one in Dulles Airport.
It's just
it was insane.
These huge hallways at Dulles Airport.
We were getting on the plane, and there were like a few people with masks on, and we're like, maybe we should be wearing masks. I don't know. And then, of course, a week later, everything shut down. So we got those interviews in just before everything hit.
Well, what's crazy is I remember when that last day that we were there, maybe second last day, we actually went out for brunch with Peter Atkinson and his wife, Dee, and the place was packed. We're in Seattle, which was ground zero in the US for COVID at the time, but nobody knew yet. This was right before people really understood what was going on. So we go into brunch, and there are people just crammed together, like literally on top of each other, and no one cared. And the fact that none of us caught anything is astonishing. I mean, I'm reasonably certain I'm immortal at this point.
Indestructible. Let's say indestructible for the sake of the conversation.
Yeah, it was pretty scary. So, as far as the documentary goes, what are you going to do? You've got 3 of your key interviews done. or 4 of your key interviews done in the can, but now what? So now we can't schedule any interviews. We decided like pretty, once everything, we knew what the situation was with COVID, we were like, I don't want to do Zoom interviews. Like, we don't want to do, not no offense against the podcast, obviously, which is being done over Zoom right now, but we didn't want to do that for a feature length documentary. Like
scale of difference.
Yeah. We thought about for a while about sending remote kits out to people that, we controlled from a distance or, with local crews, maybe that were masked and all this stuff. And it's just like, we just couldn't do it. We felt like we would just be giving up too much.
Documentary crunch.
It was worth holding off so we could do it right, and be really happy with the material we got, even if it did slow things up a little bit.
Tell me about, was there anybody who you really wanted to talk to, perhaps that you couldn't talk to, or anybody you'd planned to sort of get on into the documentary that maybe you couldn't get a hold of, or wasn't willing to talk or anything like that?
Not really. What it really comes down to is there's so many people involved in Magic's history, whether they worked at Wizards of the Coast, whether they're designers, whether they're championship players, whether they're the people, artists, or the people who volunteered to act as judges in tournaments, whether they're, you could go on and on and on. We have an hour and a half, maybe an hour and 45 minutes.
Maybe 2 hours, Brian.
And some Blu-ray bonus features, which we'll talk about at the end.
Oh, the extras.
Right.
We won't even talk about that, but yeah.
You reach a point where you have to say, do we have all the elements to tell the story, even though we haven't interviewed every single person on the planet?
If we did that, we'd be interviewing for years.
And more than that, nobody would have any time in the movie. It would just be 2 seconds of every single person. So one of the things we always have to do is decide, where do we cut off and where do we draw the line? So there are always people we wanted to interview. We would have loved to have interviewed, but it just becomes another person crammed into the movie. And eventually that has diminishing returns. You don't get anybody.
Okay, so you guys obviously have talked to tons of people, and the thing that I love about your Kickstarter page is you have basically all the heads laid out for many of the people you spoke to. And like you said, it runs the gamut from Richard Garfield, the games creator, to a content creator. Like, there is a full gamut of people in between there that you guys talk to. And I think that's really going to sort of endear yourselves to, the audience you said you were trying to serve, both the casual audience and the hardcore audience who know Richard Garfield's favorite breakfast cereal, and then the other casual audience who, just tune into a YouTube channel every so often.
Is it Lucky Charms? It should be Lucky Charms.
Yeah, I feel like that's one thing we didn't address, favorite breakfast cereals. Rands, what's your favorite breakfast cereal?
It used to be Fruit Loops, but I can't eat that anymore. I'm well and truly aged out of that.
All right.
There's a new documentary idea for you right there.
Cereal, I'm all about it. Let's do it.
Okay, so the question is, obviously, you're spending time with these people who you're interviewing. You're talking to them not just on camera, but off camera. Was there any stories that you heard that you didn't actually get a chance to capture on film that you remember and you wish you could have shared in the documentary that you're not going to actually have the footage for?
It's funny. I'd actually have to really think about that, because you start to lose track of what you caught on, like asking us this far removed from the interviews. It's sometimes hard to keep track of, did we get that on tape, or is that something we heard at lunch afterwards? But you always get those stories. You're always sitting there at lunch and someone will bring something up, and you asked all your questions. You asked really good questions. You dug in really great directions, and then you're sitting at lunch and they'll just randomly drop some bombshell on you, and you're like, where was that an hour ago when the cameras were rolling?
So, all right. So tell me, you're talking to all these people, you're talking to over 50 personalities who have been so integrally involved in this game. Tell me, personally, you guys, what was, obviously, Seth, you're a longtime fan, and you guys are obviously a little bit newer to the game. What was the most shocking thing or interesting thing or most unexpected thing you heard to come out of a game designer or a game player or a content creator's mouth?
My favorite is talking with Richard Garfield. Obviously, as a fan, we expect him to know everything about Magic. And I asked him a question about a specific card, and he looked at me and said, did I design that one? But as fans, we have this expectation, right? That people know everything about the thing Like they remember every minute of every day of their lives because we're fans of it. And, you know, obviously he's a human being, and sometimes he's designed hundreds, if not thousands of Magic cards. Perhaps he doesn't remember the one card I asked him about, and that's okay. But it really changed the way I thought about interacting with, you know, my heroes in some ways.
I think for me, it wasn't a specific story. It was a couple stories that really made me understand early on how tenuous Wizards' grip on life was. I mean, when Magic started, before this game launched, everything leading up to that moment, at any given point in time, Wizards could have collapsed. Whether it was having the money to pay to get the cards printed, whether it was getting Luke Mertens to believe they had the money to get the cards printed. Then it was getting the cards, getting the film made, almost didn't happen. Then it was getting it over to Cardamundi, almost didn't happen. Then it was getting them all back for Gen Con of 93. That almost didn't happen. At every little step, there was a disaster that was narrowly averted. And if those disasters had actually sort of reached their fruition, that's it. The game wouldn't have happened. They all would have gone bankrupt, and the game would have never been made. It would have never gone anywhere.
Well, I mean, to the further more to that point, obviously, like, I mean, not many people would know this, but Wizards was currently being sued by another role-playing game company, and Richard Garfield had to create his own game company, which licensed Magic to Wizards of the Coast. So to your point, obviously there was a million things that could have gone awry there, and absolutely thousands of things that just one little thing could have changed the course of gaming history. And it's absolutely fascinating. And one of the things that really excites me to hear you guys thread that narrative through your documentary. Now, to move on from that a little bit, like, tell me, you know, we've talked about a lot about the past, and maybe we mentioned it a little bit before, but I would love to know what sort of archival material you guys had access to. I heard the word VHS thrown around. Tell me about what sort of things players and fans and even, you know, newcomers are going to see in this documentary that they're not going to be able to see elsewhere, whether that's alternative art, whether that's cards that never got made. Like, I'm a big fan of talking about what could have been on shows like this. Tell us all about what you guys discovered that might not have been seen before by fans.
Okay, I want to just jump in before anything else.
Oh, I know you're going to
say. We can't give away too much. We want to save some surprises for people. Yeah. And I think that's important in a documentary like this, that there are things that people don't know they're going to see until they suddenly see it.
Well, despite the phrasing of this statement, I do like to be teased.
Yeah, I will not go into specifics of what we have, but like I was talking about earlier, like, we have some gold, and I'm really excited about the gold we have. And it's, you know, we were very lucky that some of our interviewees were able to literally open the vaults for us and just share some of these things with us.
I think we can, here's broad strokes, some things we've had, and some things we revealed in trailers and in photos and things like that. So, for instance, when we talked to Lisa Stevens, she casually brought out her beta playtest cards. This was an early playtest card before Magic was ever released, a deck of cards, and they're much smaller. They're random colors of cardstock. They have all sorts of improvised art on them, but there was a Black Lotus. There was a Shivan Dragon. There was
Time Warp.
I don't even remember. Yeah. And these are the cards that they actually used before Wizard of the Coast created Magic. This is how they developed the game. So we had things like that. We have artwork. We have artwork that was never used. You know, like art for cards that never came to be. We have Donato Giancola talking specifically about a piece of art that he considers his worst painting of all time, and it in fact has become shorthand when he and Tony DiTerlizzi, another Magic and D&D artist, talk about bad art. They refer to this piece of Donato's. Well, we have it, and we're gonna make sure everybody sees it. And in fact, we forced Donato to talk about it. We have preliminary art from some of the biggest cards in Magic that has never been seen before. Early drafts, early drawings, things like that. So from the art side, we have tons of things that nobody has ever seen. Artists who've told us, oh, this has been sitting in my notebook since 1993. And
Yeah.
I just never posted pictures of it. I said, that is fantastic. Please don't post any pictures of it until our movie comes out.
Yeah, we've got ephemera, all kinds of ephemera that we'll be able to show of early days, of current days, of just spanning the whole 30 years. We
have the VHS footage. I mean, we can
the
say
VHS
broad
footage
strokes.
is in broad strokes is gold. Like I said, I cannot tell you how golden it is.
There are multiple MTV.
Yeah, we have
Stop.
old commercials. We have old marketing videos. We have footage from the earliest tournaments at Magic. Stuff that precedes Wizards doing official tours.
Well, that VHS archive makes me so excited to hear about. I can't wait to see some of the stuff that, I've trolled YouTube for old Magic videos and stuff like that, and I've seen everything on there twice over. MTV commercials, Hotel California, all that sort of stuff. It's been fantastic. I can't wait to see what you guys have unearthed with all that. Now, just to pivot a little bit, like, obviously I'm so excited about the history, but one of the things that threads Magic so that makes Magic so important, and we discussed it a little bit before, is the community. How and I looked at your earlier documentary, Eye of the Beholder, and it had a bunch of community stuff in it. You talked to a lot of people who are still players, and you talked to a lot of people about how they felt the community had changed over the years. How does your documentary embrace its community, or how do you plan your documentary to embrace its community? Are you talking to players? We've talked a lot about how you've spoken to creators. Tell us a little bit about how Igniting the Spark is going to, step into the world of the players of Magic the Gathering.
Well, that was important to us. This game, it's about the players. It's about the community. It's called Magic the Gathering. It's in the title of the game, So we reached out to players, players that we knew, players that we didn't know, you know what I mean? Like, we put out random calls. So we tried to get a nice cross-section of people who played casually, through people. We have Pro Tour players, we have Hall of Famers, you know what I mean? We tried to get that scope of people whose experiences with Magic. We have some who only play Commander. We have some who only play, different forms of constructed, so we really wanted to make sure we're getting the perspective from that point of view. And we don't just talk to them about playing Magic. We talk to them about being part of this community, part of this bigger kind of world that Magic has created. I think that was important to us because in the end, without that, you don't really have much. You have a person building a deck. You know what I mean? Like, if you don't have friends, if you don't have these people that you're interacting with, that's the most fun about anything. It's the community that you're part of. Ask any collector. The thing that's coolest about collecting is the friends you make and share your collection with along the way. Same with gamers, D&D players, whatever. People who are hardcore Uno players, for all I know, that's what they care about. So we really wanted to get that in. We really wanted to get that perspective in.
It's also very interesting to see how the company, Wizards and Hasbro, but primarily Wizards, has embraced the whole community and the influencer community, the cosplay community. In a lot of ways, back in the 90s, being on the internet for a game company wasn't a thing that happened, right? The rise of the internet in a lot of ways parallels the rise of Wizards. They were, you could go onto the Wizards website and get answers to your questions, learn about cards. And I think there are going to be a lot of game companies that are going to take a lot of their cues from the way Wizards is interacting with the community now. In the future.
I 100% agree. And obviously, one of the fascinating things, we talked about Peter Atkinson, we talked about Lisa Stevens. They connected through the internet in 1991. Internet has been a integral part of Wizards, brand since day one. And I don't think Magic the Gathering could exist the way it was if it was born in this, nebulous space of, small remote communities like Dungeons and Dragons was in 1975.
74 for D&D. Yeah. And that's the thing. All these things grow out of, a bunch of friends hanging out, doing a thing. Richard created games while he was at the University of Pennsylvania. That's what he did. He took, He took classes, he pursued a PhD, and he invented games, or he made variations on games, or he modified games, whatever he, at the time, that's what he loved to do. And well, what's he going to do with those? He approaches the people who are his friends and he says, let's see if these are fun. And Magic happened to be fun. It's that's where these things grow out of. You know, we talk about what Wizards is doing with the game today, but you have to remember, in the end, it's a group of people getting together, like you were saying, Friday nights, because it's a fun thing to do. That's the long and short of it.
It's interesting to say that the magic of Magic is really the gathering.
Yeah. Oh, easily. I think one of the things you can attribute Magic's longevity to is the fact that this community of passionate fans and players not only sprouted up, but connected. They came together, they found a way to keep those interactions going, and create this sort of world in which this game can thrive, and which they can develop relationships, in which they can create friendships and bonds and things that last their whole lives. I mean, these become your friends. These are your friends. They're not just my Magic friends. These are my friends. This is the thing we do together. And for whatever reason, Magic was something that I think a lot of people could connect with in a way they couldn't connect with, you know, Vampire, you know, or whatever. But it's that aspect of it all that I think allows something like this to survive for 30 years. You could have the best game in the world, but if there isn't a way for players to find or create a thriving community where they can be together, where they can make those types of connections, then you've got a great game, but who cares?
Well, let's talk about that just from my own personal experience. Let me just share something. You know, I've traveled the world. You know, originally I'm from Australia. I moved to Vancouver. I now live on the far east coast of Canada. And every time I've arrived in a new place in my life, I've always had confidence to go somewhere new because I knew that there would be a game store where I could connect with people, if for nothing else, via Magic the Gathering. And you know, that gathering is so valuable and so important. And when I first arrived here in 2019, I started to go into the game stores. Unfortunately, COVID locked that down and sort of stuck me there. Like, you know, it sort of solidified, you know, where I was at the time. But nowadays, obviously, everything's opened back up again. And I have made more friends in the last couple of months since we've been able to re-interact through Magic the Gathering than I have since moving here at any other time. So for that, obviously, that personal story, that statement, it rings very true about that sense of the community.
There are so many amazing stories that we heard through the course of this about, you know, children on the spectrum who had trouble interacting with other people, that Magic was that thing that allowed them to interact in a socially meaningful way. And it was just incredibly uplifting to hear all these really interesting stories about people who were socially awkward, people who had trouble in social situations. Magic helped them overcome that. And that's in a very real sense, for me and a lot of people I know, why we love it too.
Yeah, there's so many interesting stories about how people come to play Magic and what it's meant to them in their lives. And so we hope to have captured some of that. You know, it's not just a game in a lot of ways. It has meaning beyond that for people.
You know, like I said, I was inspired by stories like the one you just shared, Seth. You know, when the fall starts, we'll be teaching, middle school kids how to play Magic through a library program I have here. So it's really special. It's a really uniting game, and as you know, we made that point before. It unites everyone because there is so much history to it. There's so much that's in the game. Whether you like zombies, whether you like clerics, whether you like cats, it doesn't matter what your preference is. There's something in Magic for everyone.
When you talked about wherever you moved, you were able to find that game. One of the goals they had with Friday Night Magic was this idea that wherever you are, you know what you can do Friday night. You know that somewhere in that city, in that town, there's a place where you can go and do that. And I think that, besides being a great marketing idea, I think if you get past that cynical sort of perspective on it, I think what that really does is it creates a level of comfort for people, knowing that this thing they love, they're going to be able to find it. They're going to be able to find it in a form that they recognize, you know, and can have fun with and can engage with. And there's not a lot of things out there that are like that. You know, it's it's, you know, I almost hate to put it in these terms, but it's one of the things that like fast food restaurants recognize. You can go into any McDonald's in America and you know what you're gonna get. You know what you're gonna be able to find. And if that's your comfort food, you'll always have that.
Happy Meal alert.
Magic is a happy meal.
But it's that idea that you have this thing that you can love anywhere. So it's really baked into a lot of what they do.
Well, I mean, I completely agree, and I'm gonna have to cast a counterspell on my welling emotions right now, because otherwise we'll get sucked into the how wonderful it has been for me personally, and I'm sure for everybody else listening who engages in that game, or engages in other games that were born out of what Magic gave us. Now, I do want to go back to the production just slightly. The production is done. Like, you guys have talked about how you've done all your filming and stuff like that. Let's just talk a little bit about why it's important that people find you on Kickstarter. When people think of making movies, they think about the production. Why is it important for people to sort of support you now when you guys have this huge sort of wall of footage and everything like that? Break that down. Like, why is it important that the Kickstarter is successful for this documentary to come out?
So, now our work really begins. It's like in a lot of ways. Yes, we had to, production costs to get us to the interviews and actually film the interviews, and hard drives and some other things we had, to our pre-production type costs. But now we have to craft this thing. And in order to do that, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of people. So I am the primary editor on the project, but we're using, we're going to be using people for music, and we're going to be using color correction. We're going to be doing animation in some cases and other things, and graphics, and so it takes a team to finish it, and then it takes money to finish it. And so that's why we, a lot of films on Kickstarter, it's hard a lot of times because you have to prove to people, look, we're really going to do a great product, and so it's very hard when you do that in the pre-production phase. So you're kind of in this catch-22. It's like, we got to show them what we got before they're willing to say, okay, let me back that. So, we doing the Kickstarter and post-production allows us to show you what we've got, at least a little bit, so that we're going to go through the rest of it and finish this thing. So yeah, it takes not quite a village, but it takes several people and lots of different types of assets to finish the film.
And unless you want to listen to my crappy industrial music, we're going to hire a composer.
We're going to pay for other music of some kind. Yeah. So
yeah, a big part of it, the wisdom of documentaries is that they're built in the editing bay. So when we say that's where the work really begins, it's really true. It's the story gets crafted out of this mountain of footage that we have. I used to be a magazine editor and writer, and I had an editor tell me once, when they read a first draft of my story when I was first getting started, they said, look, you need to tell a story. You're a storyteller. You're not just a hunter-gatherer. You're not just going out, getting all this information and spitting it back out. You're crafting it. You're telling a story. And documentary making is the same thing. We go out and we gather all this footage, 50 interviews, hours and hours of conversations. And that's great. We need that, but we need to then craft it into something that's compelling and something that's fun, and something that's informative, and all these different things. And the art of filmmaking and storytelling really encompasses all these different elements, like Kelly was saying, animation and graphics and Seth and music, all these different things. So it all that happens in the post-production stage, and that's what we save the Kickstarter for, because we know that's the thing that kind of requires that big staffing up, hiring a lot of people, bringing in a lot of people. Shooting it, we can do it on our own. I mean, the three of us.
We're just a three-person crew shooting it.
I do some of them on my own. I literally just go out and do the interview with all the gear and everything else. That's the easy part. It's a physical grind.
Ryan says that after going on
I had a 22-hour day yesterday.
He had a 22-hour day yesterday. But yeah, I
But-
mean, so you say that afterwards, but yeah, I mean,
Right.
yeah, it is grueling doing some of these shoots, and a lot of shoots in a row, and
It's a lot of work, but
unforgiving airlines. But yeah, other than that, but
the real creativity, I
Right,
think, comes
right.
into play at the post-production stage. That's one of the reasons, one of the reasons we like doing the Kickstarter at the end is not only, like Kelly said, we have stuff we can show people to demonstrate that there's really a movie here. But it's also an opportunity for people to kind of back it at a stage when it is at its most creative, so we have rewards that kind of reflect the creativity of the people who are in it, and access to some of the people who are in it, and things like that, that we couldn't necessarily do if we were just starting out on a project and we were kickstarting the earliest stages when we haven't made all these contacts yet, when we haven't developed all these relationships yet. So it's kind of a fun time to get involved with the movie, because so many interesting things are actually happening with it.
Yeah, and you'll actually get to see it sooner rather than later too. I mean, yeah, sometimes you back projects and 2 years, board games have this happen a lot, where you back a project 4 years later, something shows up on your door, So in this case, we will be finishing this film in the spring, and people will get to see it, in early 2023. So it'll be a more immediate satisfaction kind of quality to backing it.
Well, I mean, one of my favorite things about your previous documentary, Eye of the Beholder, The Art of Dungeons and Dragons, is it had so many great little flourishes. And, you spoke before that you were a producer on Toys That Made Us as well. That has a ton of editing flourishes and stuff as well that isn't possible just when you're filming the footage. The thing that I loved about Eye of the Beholder is it had these great sketch interstitials that was, as a talking head was telling a story, you'd have this great visualization of it, whether it's, somebody falling through a roof of the old TSR building or whatever it was, you'd have these great visual things, and it really helps build this documentary. And I hope people, I've definitely put my support behind it. I hope others do as well, and find out what we can do, because could you imagine the fantastic flying interstitials that we could make out of the history of Magic cards, trolls across the screen or whatever. I think it's 100% worth the support. Now, before we move on and sort of wrap up, tell us about what backers can expect. What if somebody visits the Kickstarter page? What can they discover there? What are the rewards that they will be able to cherish if they decide to offer their support to you?
Brad, I can take this one if you want, or I can start it at least. So we have a great range of things for people who are fans of the game and fans of film. So we can everything from the very lowest level, getting we have been able to partner with 2 very cool artists on some black and white artwork for stickers and t-shirts, Scott M. Fisher and Mark Poole, obviously luminaries of the magic art world, to do, and we have those great t-shirts, which are awesome. And then we've got, of course, our movie collector's edition Blu-ray, which we were referring to earlier, which is going to be packed with extras for folks. I mean, and the best part about that is, as we're editing the film and things end up on the proverbial cutting room floor, we will pick them back up and lovingly put them into the extras. So you'll get that on the Blu-ray. We have streaming extras for people who want to stay digital, so they'll be able to get access to a bunch of that digitally. And then we have some great experience. Well, let's talk about the playmats and tokens. We haven't even gotten there yet. So the the playmats and tokens. So we were able to get 5 different magic artists involved in giving us art that has not been used in this fashion before. So this is not magic art in the sense that it's not on a magic card, but is art by magic artists. The artists we have on board are Donato Giancola, who we mentioned before. We have Jarrell Threet, who's a newer artist in magic. We have Liz Danforth, who is a very famous person who did Hymn to Torek. I always get that name mixed up in my head. Winona Nelson, who is really great, has a really very unique style. And then we have, of course, the first art director for Magic, Jesper Mirfors. Marfors. I've heard it pronounced differently recently,
really?
So we need to make sure we get that right. So Yeah, so we've got great playmats by them, including
The last
my
is the most
favorite, which
important.
is Donato's Spore Frogs playmat, which is adorable. If Spore Frogs can be adorable. And then we have a set of 4 art tokens as well. And then Brian, why don't you talk about our experiences?
One of the things we wanted to do was find something that would be a little different for people who backed at some of the higher levels. And we talked to Gavin Verhey, who's the principal game designer at Wizards of the Coast. He's designed many of the cards, as he says, many of the cards you love and many of the cards you hate have come out of Gavin's brain. He's big on coin flip cards. Anyway, he agreed to donate some of his time, and two of the things he'll be doing. One, he'll be giving a I don't want to say lecture. He'll be having an intimate conversation with up to 10 backers, where he'll talk about what goes into designing a card, what went into designing certain specific cards. Again, cards you love, cards you hate. What goes into some of the differences when designing and approaching different sets. All the things that are happening behind the scenes. He'll be discussing, and at those tiers you also get all our other stuff. You get t-shirts and playmats and cards and
the whole shebang,
the Blu-ray, all sorts of things. And another thing Gavin will be doing is playing Commander online with 3 of our backers. So if you back at a certain tier, you'll be able to sit down across the internet and play Commander with Gavin and 2 other backers, and see how you do against someone who not only is the principal game designer at Wizards of the Coast, but he also is a Pro Tour player, so he is no slouch. He beat Seth. We
with
were
my
in
own
Luca,
deck.
Italy. He beat Seth with his own deck, and it was. I gotta say, Seth kind of let down the Team Spark. I don't like to hold that over him, but really, it was disappointing.
Do you want to mention the one we had?
Yeah, we had one other tier where you could actually play against Gavin in Seattle at Mox, outside of Seattle, at Mox Boarding House in Bellevue, which is a famous gaming store. And someone has already snatched that up. So someone and 2 of their friends will be squaring off against Gavin face to face. And I might fly out just to watch and see what happens. But
Donato.
Yeah, then we have one other tier, which I think, as a fan myself of art, of the gaming art, I'm sort of excited by. Donato Giancola will be offering up a session again for 10 people, where he talks about art that he developed for Magic the Gathering, paintings he's done. He'll be showing off preliminary drawings, reference photos, all the sort of things that go into making some of the most famous Magic the Gathering art in the last 30 years. Donato is a massive force in the world of fantasy and science fiction art. I mean, I know a lot of the people watching this know his work from Magic the Gathering, but he's also done innumerable book covers. He's
Lord
done
of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings. He's done all sorts of work, and he's considered a modern grandmaster in this world. So getting to kind of dive into his stuff. He's also a super cool guy. I mean, frankly,
And
I spent a lot of
unabashed
time
nerd.
talking to Donato. Yeah, he's a gamer. I mean, he's one of us. So having a chance to sit and learn about this stuff, and then of course he'll be doing a Q&A afterwards, so people will be able to actually ask him questions. So those are some of the rewards we're offering that we think, we hope gamers and Magic fans will be. I'm super into the t-shirts. I always say that the reason people form bands or decide to do Kickstarters and make movies is so they can make the cool t-shirts that they always wanted. So the Mark Poole shirt and the Scott Fisher's Angel art t-shirt, I'm not gonna lie, I'm going to make sure we make about 5 extra of each for myself.
Yeah, we're not sporting our usual t-shirts tonight. Usually we've got an Eye of the Beholder shirt, and
yeah, normally we
I thought this was most appropriate.
Yeah, true.
So Seth is wearing a shirt that says, I like magic and whiskey. Both statements I will agree with.
So we tried to get a range of rewards, stuff that people will like. And we have signed tiers where the playmats and the tokens are signed by the artists who worked on them.
Yep.
And then we've got a couple surprises coming up. Things that will be dropping.
We haven't announced all of them yet.
Nope. A few fun things that we'll be doing.
Awesome. Well, this episode is going up a little later, so obviously all of that is going to be linked in the description. So what you might be able to do is jump on and find out some of those exciting things that we haven't even mentioned yet, plus some of the things you've just seen either on screen or you're going to find linked in the description. So, I mean, I'm going to have to cut it short. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, but it has been fantastic to hear the story behind the story I'm soon going to watch, because I am absolutely thrilled about this documentary. But before we get out of here, I do have a question. I feel like, if you were to drop in at a Friday Night Magic anywhere in the world or whatever, somebody's going to ask you this question. I believe we already have an answer from Kelly, but feel free to reiterate it. What, to each of you, is your favorite Magic deck?
Yeah. I actually like the brothers commander deck.
Oh, Kaneos and Tiro of Melitus.
Yeah.
The Gay Bros.
Yeah.
It's one of the first openly gay Magic cards. It's awesome.
Right.
We love it.
I love a commander deck that Seth helped me put together. And
it also makes cats.
It also makes cats. But I mean, the cat tribal, standard deck it was fine for teaching and learning how to play Magic and everything, but I really like Commander. I'm a Commander fan, and I really enjoy the concept of Commander versus a two-person game. And so I really like 100 cards that are all different, and I like that concept. And I think if I were to spend more time building decks, it would be Commander decks. Because that's where the fun is, I think. That for me, it's not that 60 card it can't be fun. It's just it's
a social
it's
component.
more of a right, exactly. It's because it has more of a social component. So that would be my answer on decks. Seth?
All right, let's jump to Brian now. Just quickly.
Oh, Brian now.
Yeah, my answer will probably be simpler than Seth's. I'm not gonna lie, I like it simple. I like punching things with creatures. I'm not a control player or anything like that. I like throwing things down. Maybe this is like growing out of D&D. You know what I mean? Like I just like being able to swing at things. So I'm big with angels, angel tribal, and part of it. And again, this gets to, I think, the fun of Commander. I love the art. I think angel art is some of the best art in Magic. Although I often say that about a lot of the art in Magic. So, but I really love the angel art in Magic. So I think that initially attracted me to the cards. I was like, I don't even care what they do. I just love having these cards in my deck because the art blows me away. But then I also get to fly and hit things and make more angels, and suddenly it's death from above. So I really like sort of the simple pleasure of smashing things, with a few other things thrown in just because I like keeping it weird. The type of decks that I enjoy are decks that, besides hitting things, get strange just so I can see what happens. I want to build the little machine that spits out more whatevers, or things like that. I think, like Kelly, I think that attracts me to the idea of Commander more than 60 card. I just wish I had more opportunity to play it.
All right, well, now we've saved the one with the longest history to last. Seth, tell us what is your answer to the question? What is your favorite Magic deck to play?
Short and sweet. Orzhov life gain. I am happiest when my life's over 1,000.
I mean, it can happen, definitely. And then, you can feed that into spirits or something like that as well.
Yeah, I actually own the original art for Exsanguinate, so it is pretty much my signature card.
That's awesome. I love that simplicity. I mean, I love that combination of colors as well. Obviously, I loved Ixalan for bringing us white vampires because it very much plays into that theme. Guys, I could not be more grateful for your sparing your time today, and I could not be even more grateful for the effort you have put into bringing this documentary to people. I obviously spent a lot of time online talking about the history of not just that game, but many others as well. But we wouldn't be here without Magic the Gathering. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
For having us and for supporting the documentary, the Kickstarter. It's in the end, we make these things. We don't have anything if we don't have an audience. You know what I mean? And we appreciate that people like yourself are willing to sort of champion these indie projects. I think we live in a community these days where there are lots of indie creators, whether they're making games, whether they're making variations on Magic, you know what I mean? Like different ways to play it. Movies, magazines, all sorts of stuff. So it's always cool when someone's willing to, hell, podcasts, it's always cool when someone's willing to get behind other creators' work. So we really appreciate that.
Seriously, thank you.
Well, I appreciate you guys saying that. And like I said, you are correct. There's a lot of noise in the creative space, but this is definitely something I wanted to ring the bell as loud as possible for. So I loved having you guys on the show. Before you go, I will mention to everybody that everything we've talked about today, including obviously the Kickstarter, is going to be linked in the description. Obviously, as well, we're going to link a couple of other sort of YouTube channels and stuff like that these guys are sort of tangentially involved in as well, that play Magic and all that sort of fun stuff. We're also going to link some of the description, some of the links to some of their other projects as well, because they're super exciting and well worth checking out, that you can find on the internet for free. Just watch a couple of ads and you get to watch those as well. So I really love what these guys are doing, and I really, if you guys want to support me, please support this particular project, because I don't have a Patreon or anything like that. Consider this my Patreon this month. By all means, I would love for you guys to check out and support this, because I would want this documentary to be as magical, no pun intended, as it possibly can be. Thanks so much from me. Goodbye from me. Goodbye from you guys.
Goodbye.
See you later.
Thank you so much. And remember, until next time, keep shuffling.
Magic the Gathering was the first trading card game.
Dr. Richard Garfield, a mathematics professor, is the game's inventor.
I wanted a game where there were things that people loved and hated.
Magic was a big risk for Wizards of the Coast.
We should have been a lot more scared than we were.
If Magic the Gathering failed, then we were done.
The day I saw Magic, this is the next big thing. This is the next Dungeons & Dragons.
It's one of the best-selling games in the world, even bigger than Monopoly.
It was revolutionary. It wasn't just creating a new game, it was creating a new category.
It created a market segment. Stores started popping up just to feed that demand.
This is what over 1 million Magic cards looks like.
It's crack. They had to keep it off the counters because people would steal it.
It's always been the gathering. That's the important part. That is the magic.
It is not one game. It is 100 different games.
There are 6 different types of pieces of chess. There are 40,000 Magic cards.
The most expensive card, as anyone will tell you, is a Black Lotus.
You might be willing to pay $300 to $500.
Magic is the upper echelon of fantasy art. All the great artists are doing work on Magic.
Every day was like Christmas, and it consistently blew my mind.
Richard and I were the great partnership. He brought genius, and I brought luck.
We knew we had lightning in a bottle.
Richard held up his check.
Boom, it takes off.
This really could work. This could be big.